Welcome to BourseTV, where we seek to illuminate the success of ASX-listed companies, both big and small. The Dow Jones in the US had another big night, up 360 points, close to 1% to 42,440. The market keeps breaking records and is powering on against a backdrop of lower interest rates and ahead of the US reporting season. And of course, the US election and presidential race to be decided in less than 30 days on the 4th of November. In the words made famous by Robert F. Kennedy in 1966, we live in interesting times. I am joined on the news desk today by my BourseTV co-host and panellist, Alexandra Lowen.
Thank you, Rod. It's so great to be here. I'm very excited to talk today with our mining and resources guest to find out how they are going with their 2 offshore projects and his view on where commodities prices might go, and in particular the copper price, where his company will have a big focus over the next few years.
Yes, we certainly do have an impressive guest with a great mining pedigree, with time spent at Rio Tinto, amongst other highly successful mining and resource companies in Australia and internationally. Scott Caithness, Managing Director of Alderan Resources Limited, ASX ticker code is AL8. Welcome, Scott, to BourseTV.
Thanks very much, Rod. Great to be here and great to meet you, Alexandra.
You too.
Scott, for the purposes of people who might be watching this interview today, and for the first time, can you please set the scene and tell us a bit about Alderan Resources and its 2 key international projects?
Sure. Alderan Resources, obviously an ASX-listed mineral exploration company. Our projects are in the US, where we have copper and gold projects, and also in Brazil, where we have some lithium projects. So we're very focused on critical metals. So our priority at the moment is what we call the Caithness project, which is in Utah in the USA, which is a great jurisdiction to work in.
Scott, I understand you've recently returned from visiting your project in the US at Utah, and over the course of the past 2 weeks have made some announcements to the ASX about key developments and results there. Can you please tell our viewers of BourseTV what those results mean for the company and its focus over the next year?
Sure. Look, I've just come back from a visit to we're drilling at the moment in our Caithness project area and the new what's called the New Year's prospect. So I'll give you a little bit of background about the property and the project. So Caithness District is an old copper and gold mining district in the US, in Utah. Alderan's had it in its portfolio for quite a few years. It did actually farm out a large area called Frisco to Rio Tinto at one stage, but we're looking for very large-scale porphyry copper deposits, Rio Tinto scale. Alderan got the property back off Rio Tinto towards the second half of last year, and we started working on it for smaller, high-grade copper deposits. So Caithness itself was an old copper gold mine, which mined grades of around about 2% copper with about 0.3 gram per tonne gold credit. It finished mining in about 1919. So it operated for about 10, 15 years and stopped mining then. There's been quite a few high-grade drill intersections after mining ceased, probably over the last 60 years or so into the project, including actually one that was drilled by Rio, which intersected 42 metres at 1.9% copper and 0.6 grams per tonne gold. So we're very excited to get the property back. There's clearly potential for some high-grade copper there, and New Year's is part of the same belt that Caithness sits in. So there's actually 3 projects there. There's Comet, which was a small gold-rich mine, then Caithness, which was copper-rich mine, and then New Year's, which is described in the old literature as a promotional mine. So really no production numbers out of it, but has some interesting historical drill holes that were drilled back 60 years ago. So with good grades of copper up to 2%, 13, 14 metre intersections at over 2% copper. So our focus has been on New Year's, and that came out of the work that we were doing after we got the project back from Rio Tinto.
Scott, just moving on to commodity prices, we've seen some stellar movement on that front, as you'd well appreciate, particularly in the gold price, which is up over 25%. for 2024 to around 3,700 Australian dollars an ounce. This is pretty amazing. And in the context of where it sat even 5, 10, 15 years ago, what do you see happening on the commodities front, particularly for the copper price, where you will have a big focus, particularly in your Utah project, as you just mentioned?
Yeah, I think the copper price, it's interesting over the last 12, 18 months or so, we've seen a lot of the majors putting out announcements, a real focus on copper. Clearly, there's going to be growing demand for copper, I think, with the global trend for electrification. So the copper underpins that trend. I mean, it's an old commodity. It's not a new glamorous commodity like lithium and some of the others, the rare earths that are coming through. But it's sort of like the base commodity. So using electric cars as an example, obviously there's a lot of growth in electric cars going forward. So the amount of copper to be used in electric cars is about 3 to 4 times the amount of copper in your standard car, your internal combustion engine car now. So even just the electric car growth is underpinning. And of course, a lot of the mines around the world, the large mines that are owned by the companies like BHP and Rio Tinto and Freeport, organisations like that, they're becoming much more mature. So the grades are dropping, the production costs are increasing. So and there is a lot of talk about copper going through a real growth phase over the next few years in terms of demand. So I see that the copper price is really being underpinned going forward and is really a good growth story.
Very interesting. But just for our viewing audience, perhaps you can explain why finding more copper is so important for companies like Alderan Resources, as well as industry heavyweights like BHP, and they're giving a big focus to that at the moment.
Yeah, look, I think obviously for a company like us, you want to get involved in a commodity that's a growth commodity that's got a good future. Commodity prices are always cyclical, so you're always riding the ups and downs of those commodity prices. And obviously, with the large deposits that the big companies find, they're difficult to find. There's a lot of challenges often in developing those mines, and it takes them many, many years for those mines to come to fruition. So there are real opportunities for companies like Alderan to have smaller, higher grade deposits. They're not generally deposits that the big companies look for because they're too small. They don't make an impact on their bottom line when they mine them. So, but they're very, very suitable for small companies like Alderan. So, in terms of targets, we see companies in the market, they can have 10, 15 million tonnes, but if the grade's good, 1.5% copper, 2% copper, then that's a real positive for those companies going forward. And
I guess the bigger companies are looking for you to be successful as well, because that creates an opportunity for them potentially down the track as well. If
your smaller target, your medium scale, high grade target, ends up being a much larger deposit, then obviously the big companies come knocking on your door. Yeah, I mean that's the way a lot of the larger companies are actually getting into new developments and new projects.
So that creates a pretty exciting market ahead of us. With obviously commodity prices rising, exploration companies like Alderan, doing their work, and the bigger companies keeping a close eye on you. Really.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And the bigger companies farm into projects that they think are interesting with junior explorers. And obviously, if the junior is successful, then they look at acquiring.
And Scott, in your experience, where do you see the outlook for Alderan Resources against the backdrop of commodity prices and lower interest rates?
Look, in terms of, it's pretty easy to answer the question in terms of commodity prices and where we're going as a company. So we're focused on the critical metals. So we see copper. Lithium's ridden a bit of a roller coaster over the last couple of years, but again, it's a commodity that will find its level and it will ride the waves just like every other commodity as we go forward. It would just normalise. Whereas if you went back 2 or 3 years ago, it was really frothy. It was peaking and everybody was very excited about it. All you had to mention was you took a sample and assayed it for lithium and the market got excited about it. Whereas now it's sort of normalising. So in terms of where Alderan's going, we think we're in the right mix of commodities for going forward. Again, going back to the global trend for electrification. And obviously our lithium projects are a lot earlier stage than what we've got sitting at Caithness. So they're ticking away. We've done we've done some work on those, and we've got anomalies which we have to follow up. We think Brazil's a great jurisdiction for lithium going forward. But with the copper, obviously our main objective after doing our round of drilling that we've just done, where we got some very, very encouraging results. We've only got preliminary results at this stage. They're PXRF assays on core, but some very exciting, we've got average samples over sample intervals up to 23% copper in one hole and up to 17% in the other hole. But we haven't got the lab assays back yet. So obviously that will be the proof of the pudding, but certainly visually looking at the core, it looks very exciting. So these holes were drilled to verify old holes that were drilled over 60 years ago, where they had some encouraging results out of that, but no drilling had been done for the last 60 years on this prospect. So our objective now will be obviously to get the lab results back, make sure that what we believe we're seeing in the core is real. And then it will basically be to design the next stage of exploration to start proving up something and try and get some scale to the target. So we've only drilled at this stage 2 holes into the key prospect. We did drill a 3rd hole, which we had variable locations for. We weren't successful with that hole. We actually abandoned that hole because what we were getting in the hole did not agree with what was in the old logs from 25 years ago in that particular hole's case. So the other 2, we got great results. So at the top of one hole, we got an intersection of about 30 metres of what looks to be very good grade copper mineralisation, oxide. And in the second hole, we got a zone at the top of the hole of about 25 metres, again, very good visuals. And then we got a deeper down, we got nearly another 20-metre zone, which looks like it's sulphide rich further down the hole. So we just need to get the assays back, which will take a few weeks.
So all in all, a very exciting time for the company.
Yeah, look, we're very excited. I mean, the really exciting thing about this particular area too is that we did magnetic modelling of the area. We also modelled up the old Cactus and Comet deposits. We found that the old Cactus and Comet deposits were still open at depth. And I mentioned before that Cactus was mined at 2% copper grade. So we believe that that's still open. But with the magnetics, what we did was we modelled Cactus and Comet with the magnetics. And we found that they had beautiful discrete magnetic anomalies sitting on them. The New Year's target, which is only about 500 metres away from Cactus, also has a discrete magnetic anomaly sitting over the top of it. And then there's actually another 12 that look very, very identical, all within the local district that haven't been explored in the past. So we've got, obviously, our first step, verify New Year's and check, right, which is at the moment, at this stage, we think that's a tick. Next stage will be to try and see what scale we've got at New Year's. And then we will also start to look at those other targets around as well, because there's a lot of potential for buried deposits there as well.
Great. Scott, thanks for joining us today on BourseTV and good luck with the ongoing success of Alderan Resources. For more information on this exciting company, you can visit their website or go to the announcements on the ASX. Don't forget the ticker code is AL8.
Thank you very much.
Very
Thank
good.
you both.
Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Exciting
Well
times
done.
ahead.
Yeah,
Very
cheers.
exciting.
Very good.
Thanks for coming in. At BourseTV, we look forward to bringing you many more company stories like Alderan Resources across a range of diverse sectors as we shine a light and illuminate their success on the program. For our viewers, our aim is to find the diamonds in the rough, maybe we've seen one today, and let you be the judge on whether they could be some of the best kept secrets in the Australian share market. I'm Rod North and look forward with my co-host Alexandra Lowen on BourseTV to bringing you many more companies of interest over coming months. Thank you very much.